Hello everybody, in this video I will be going over bracketology for December the 9th. Wednesday, December the 9th. You can see my 1 seeds are Gonzaga, Baylor, Michigan State, and Illinois. Gonzaga not only are the best team, but also got a good resume to back that up with wins over West Virginia and Kansas. Baylor having a win over Illinois, a fellow 1 seed, in my opinion, deserves that number 2 1 seed. Michigan State having that win over Duke, and then Illinois also going to Duke and win. Both having the same wins, and Illinois only having that one loss to Baylor. Now we go over here. See, my first 2 seed is Iowa, followed by West Virginia, Kansas, and Houston. Iowa is a pretty impressive performance tonight, last night against North Carolina. It's a really fun team to watch, and I don't know how many 3-pointers. That's going to be a good win. And West Virginia has a pretty good resume after winning that South Dakota tournament. Went over South Dakota State, who probably wins their league. VCU, who's decent, and also got a win over Western Kentucky. And so, based on that, I'll give you the 2 seed. Kansas finally got them to get a really good win. Besides that Kentucky game, beat Creighton last night. So that's 2 pretty good wins for them. Although the Kentucky win should age well come March. Houston, they've got a win over Texas Tech on a neutral court, and also a home win on a South Carolina team that win should be better by the time February and March roll around. And South Carolina usually does better in conference play, at least the last few years. My 3 seeds, Villanova, Texas, Tennessee, and Creighton. Villanova, I nearly put them on the 2-line. The reason they're not there yet is because of that loss to Virginia Tech. And yeah, that loss is not looking so good at the moment. As you saw last night, Penn State just boat raced Virginia Tech on the road. So at this point, I keep them as a 3 seed as respect for that loss. But they do have good wins over Arizona State, an okay Boston College team, and a win at Texas. And speaking of Texas, they're at a 3 seed. No issue with the loss to Villanova, and they just won that Maui Asheville tournament as well. Tennessee got a home win over Colorado, who's decent. So, pretty good way to start out the season. And they're the clear favorites in the SEC at this point. Creighton took that 1-point loss to Kansas, but I'm not going to dock them too much for that. Wisconsin falls after that buzzer beater to Marquette. The issue with that loss, it's not a bad loss. It's just not ideal because Oklahoma State went in there just a few days prior and won by double digits, and then Wisconsin goes in there and actually loses straight up. So I have to dig it for that. North Carolina lost to Iowa on the road, but that's not a big deal. I mean, teams lose to top 10 teams on the road all the time. And then the loss to Texas on a neutral, not bad. And the wins over UNLV, who is absolutely atrocious. That win probably won't count for much. But the Stanford win I actually liked. Arizona State and Richmond. Arizona State, aside from that Villanova loss, they've mostly looked apart so far this season. We saw them go on the road and beat Cal, and they've looked okay. And that win over Rhode Island, which is actually a pretty good win at this point. Now we go over to here. I got Florida State, Texas Tech, Virginia, and Rutgers as the 5 seeds. Florida State, I know we haven't seen them play good competition yet, but they'll get their opportunity tonight against Indiana at home to pick up a good win. And then probably a quad 1 win. Texas Tech, again, haven't done that much so far. Although they do have a game against Abilene Christian tonight, which would be interesting. Abilene Christian's undefeated. I haven't mentioned that. Virginia, this is one of my most disappointing teams so far. Now, I do think they'll eventually get back on track, but having to go to overtime to beat an average MAC team in Kent State, it's not a good sign. And then also losing to a San Francisco team that lost to UMass Lowell. You have to dig with that. Rutgers, they were short-handed, but they still get the win by double digits over Syracuse. My 6 seeds, St. Louis, Louisville, Indiana, and San Diego State. I didn't really talk about Richmond, but the Kentucky win is starting to look a little bit not what they hoped it to be. But I think by March it shouldn't be that bad of a win. I don't think Kentucky will give its bad in March. But at this point, I do give the nod to Richmond in the A-10. St. Louis does have that win over LSU. I'm not really sure how good LSU is, but it should be at least an okay win, at least a quad 2 win for them. Louisville, undefeated so far. Wins over Seton Hall, Western Kentucky. I respect that, especially since they are short-handed themselves. They've got 3 key rotation players that are out, and they're still undefeated. So good for them. Indiana went 2-1 in Valley, wins over Stanford. Got a win over Providence. The Providence win should age well. But the losses aren't bad. Texas loss isn't bad since, in my mind, they're a top 12-ish team according to this bracketology. San Diego State, a team that really a lot of people kind of underrated so far. Yeah, they've looked apart. They escaped against Pepperdine. They had a big run at the end to close out that game to avoid a bad loss there. And then they got a win over UCLA. Now, a name that you haven't seen yet is the Duke Blue Devils. I'm moving them down pretty far at this point, all the way down to the top 7 seed. Just because they haven't really done anything. They're, 0-4 against the spread, I believe. 4-4, 0-5. They haven't covered a single spread yet. They lose by double digits to Illinois. They got worked by Michigan State. And then they only beat Coppin, a terrible Coppin State team, by 10. If you want to compare that, Georgetown beat that Coppin State team by like 20, 30 points, and Duke only beat them by 10. And then they didn't cover against Bellarmine either. So I'm moving them out pretty far because they don't have any notable wins as of yet. Oklahoma, a team that I think is pretty underrated. They got that win on the road against TCU. They got another chance to prove themselves tonight against Xavier on the road. Austin Reeves has been playing well for them. And I wouldn't be surprised if they break a top 25 this season. And I think Oklahoma is very underrated. Stanford, although they go 1-2 in power, they do get that win over Alabama, who's pretty good themselves. Michigan, again, haven't really done a whole lot yet. Luckily, they escaped that Oakland ordeal. They had to go to overtime to beat a winless Oakland team. I think they're 0-6. And they knocked off UCF at home this past Sunday, which is not that great of a win, but okay, I guess. 8 seeds, got LSU, Florida, Ohio State, and Virginia Tech. LSU, aside from that St. Louis game, have looked apart so far. Florida escaped against Army, but they rebounded pretty well and beat Boston College pretty handily. Ohio State, I'm kind of not buying into this team at this point. I really didn't like their performance against Notre Dame. I don't think Notre Dame is very good, and they absolutely could have lost that game. And they don't have anything else really on the resume yet, and they struggled against UMass Lowell themselves too. Virginia Tech, I'm moving down. Villanova win is keeping them in the field at this point. That Virginia Tech performance last night was awful against Penn State. Moving on, got 9 to 10 seeds. Got Oregon, Marquette, Arkansas, Western Kentucky as 9 seeds. Oregon rebounding against Seton Hall last Friday, but did take that loss to Missouri. Kind of a random loss I did not see coming myself. So I'm keeping them at this 9 spot, but I don't expect them to be a 9 seed. I think they'll be higher than this. Really in a couple of weeks. Just like to see them play a few more games. Now Marquette, they took that loss to Oklahoma State, but that Oklahoma State is pretty good themselves and got a win over Wisconsin. So that moves them into the field. Arkansas got a few mid-major wins that might be okay. Lipscomb is a decent team. North Texas is a decent team. West Kentucky, they're second place in South Dakota, and they absolutely could have won that West Virginia game. So I'm keeping them as a 9 seed at this point, although that Louisville performance did not look good. Connecticut as a 10, they got their first notable win last week against USC. UCLA, Alabama, and SMU. Alabama winning the consolation side of the Maui bracket. UCLA, they won after they lost to San Diego State. Although they did 3 overtimes to beat Pepperdine, but regardless, that is a win. So I got them as a 10 seed at this point. And then SMU moving up after a road win over Dayton. Now to reveal the bubble portion of this bracket. Just give me a second there. Got Colorado, Loyola Chicago, Kentucky at Clemson as 11 seeds. Colorado, not a whole lot to say about them. They were somewhat competitive against Tennessee. Loyola Chicago, we haven't seen them quite yet. I do think they absolutely can win the Missouri Valley, and it was a pretty good conference, although Northern Iowa took those losses. Kentucky and Clemson, Kentucky, there's just nothing there. A win over Moorhead State is just not going to count for much. And then to get blown out by Georgia Tech and losing to Kansas and losing to Richmond at home, especially that Georgia Tech loss, who came off losses to Mercer and whoever else it was, I think it was Georgia State. Absolutely could understand anybody taking them out of the field entirely, but I'm keeping them in as an 11 seed for now. Clemson won their little MTE over Purdue and Mississippi State, so I have respect for them. I'm keeping them in the field at this point, although whoever wins that Clemson-Maryland game tonight will move into the field, and the loser will be out. Minnesota, Missouri, Xavier, and Rhode Island are my last one. Minnesota wins over Boston College. Missouri, that win over Oregon. I'm keeping them in that last one for now because I'm not totally buying this Missouri team, especially since Oregon was short-handed in that game. Xavier, not totally buying them either, although they're 6-0 and got that road win over Cincinnati. And Rhode Island, unfortunately, went 0-2 in that Arizona State Boston College back-to-back games. At Boston College, a game might come back to haunt them though. But other than that, they performed pretty well. So I'm giving them the nod to making it to the field at this point. Now to bring in all of the rest of these these teams here, Liberty and Furman rounding out the 12 seed line. South Dakota State, decent wins. They got a win over Bradley, who's pretty good. Went over Utah State, went over Iowa State. Liberty got a few power conference wins. Ohio took Illinois to the brink, so I got them out of the back. Looks pretty good this year. I mentioned Abilene Christian is undefeated, and Georgia State winning against Georgia Tech. And a quick shout out to Army and Navy for that matter. Both teams look pretty good so far. Now, there's only 68 spots, so some teams will be left out. My first 4 out are Miami, Memphis, Arizona, and Dayton. Miami comeback went over Purdue at home. Memphis, I think they'll make it into the tournament, but they just don't have a whole lot on the resume at this point. Arizona, not too much there as of yet. They won their games, although they had a close game against Eastern Washington. Dayton took that loss to SMU at home, so they're out of the field at this point. Next 4 out, VCU, who's kind of overperformed, though they did take that loss to Penn State, which hurts. Southern Cal, Penn State themselves, and Boise State. USC got a win over BYU. Penn State over Virginia Tech on the road. Boise State gets an opportunity against BYU tonight. And you can see my considered teams: St. Mary's, BYU, Maryland, Seton Hall, San Francisco, Providence, Utah, St. Bonaventure, Ole Miss, NC State, TCU, Purdue, Cincinnati, and Syracuse. And I mentioned Oklahoma State would be in this field at this point. They'd probably be like a 7 seed if they were not banned from this tournament. Haven't heard about their appeal as of yet. But as of now, they are banned from the tournament. You can see the Biz by conference, Big Ten, by far the best league, top to bottom. And I even think the bottom teams, although Nebraska lost to Nevada, they look improved. Northwestern's decent, and Maryland and Penn State have performed really well so far this season. ACC, Big 12 with 6. Again, like I said, it would be 7 with Oklahoma State. SEC, a rough start for them. Kind of feels odd for them to still have 7 teams. But it's just how it shakes out. Big East with 5. Big East, 5 without Seton Hall and Providence, which is interesting. Pac-12, 5. A-10 with 3. American with 2. And WCC and Mountain West with, bring up the rear with only 1 bid each. And thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. And give it a like, and subscribe. Thank you for watching again.